All right, we're diving into a pretty wild theory today. What if I told you the master plan for digital immortality wasn't just an idea, but that it's actually been under construction for the past 40 years? Let's break down what some are calling the Immortality Project. So let me just start by asking you this. What if the whole dream of uploading our minds isn't some new Silicon Valley fantasy? What if it's a carefully laid out plan that's been quietly unfolding right in front of us since the early 80s? You know, this quote from the source material really gets to the heart of it. The whole argument is that you could build something this massive, piece by piece, across totally different industries, and never once have to announce the grand plan. You just do the work. So where does a claim this huge even begin? Well, the author we're looking at points to one specific person and one single moment that they believe kicked this entire thing off. This is Exhibit A. A young Steve Jobs back in 1983 laying this out. And the author argues, look, this isn't just a fun thought experiment. This is a mission statement. The goal wasn't just to build faster computers. No, it was to build a machine that could capture the very essence of a person, how they think, their worldview, and keep it alive forever. And this wasn't just some random thing he said. It was a core part of his whole philosophy. Jobs said over and over that the next big thing, the real revolution, would happen where biology and technology collide. He even called death life's change agent, almost like it was a problem that technology was meant to solve. And, he didn't just talk the talk. He spent $100,000 of his own money to get his genome sequenced for his cancer treatment. He was all in on this idea. Okay, now this is where things get really wild. How do you go from a big idea, a mission, to actual functioning technology? The answer, according to this theory, is a hidden connection between smashing atoms and mapping the brain. Seriously. So picture this. In the late 20th century, both particle physicists at places like CERN and biologists studying genes hit the exact same brick wall. They were drowning in data. The Large Hadron Collider was creating a flood of information every single second, and so were the new gene sequencers. It was literally impossible to store it all. They both had the same nightmare problem. How do you find the one important signal in a billion pieces of noise and find it instantly? And a solution that the physicists came up with is what the source calls an observer stack. The best way to think about it is like a super fast, super smart bouncer for data. It stands right at the door between the real world and your hard drive. And in less than a microsecond, it decides, you're interesting, you get in, you're not, you're gone forever. Now here is the absolute key. The design of this bouncer is exactly the same in both fields. It doesn't matter if it's a particle collision or a neuron firing in your brain. Step 1, a sensor sees it. Step 2, it turns it into digital code. Step 3, a super fast filter picks out only the important bits. And step 4, only that essential piece of information gets saved. Same 4 steps, identical. And this is the big reveal in this part of the theory. The author argues this is absolutely not a coincidence. The biologists didn't just happen to invent the same thing. No, they straight up borrowed the blueprints from the physicists at CERN to solve their own data problem. It wasn't two people having the same idea. It was a direct transfer of technology from one field to another. All right, let's follow the next clue. We're moving from these giant physics labs right down to the code running on our computers. The theory claims the next part of the puzzle is hidden in the operating systems we use every single day. And guess who comes right back into the story? Steve Jobs. Back in the 80s, his next computers were the go-to machines for heavy-duty science. And where did they end up? Places like CERN, being used for exactly this kind of data sifting work. In fact, the World Wide Web itself was invented by Tim Berners-Lee on a Next computer at CERN. And when Apple bought Next years later, that very same technology became the heart of every Mac and iPhone. Now check this out. When Jobs and his team turned that Next tech into Apple's new operating system, they needed a name for its core. They didn't call it System 10 or Project X. He personally named it Darwin. And when asked why, he said, because it's about evolution. The author argues this was a deliberate signal, a hint, that he was building a system designed to evolve, just like life. Okay, so if you thought calling the operating system Darwin was a little on the nose, you might want to sit down for this one. There's an experimental, open-source version of Darwin out there with a name that is just impossible to ignore. It's called Brain Transplant Edition. I'm not kidding. And the author says this is not a joke. This is a massive piece of evidence. So why would you give it a name like that? Well, because when you look at what it was actually built to do, it reads like a checklist for building a brain-computer interface. It was tweaked for lightning-fast response times. It could fire up neural hardware before the main OS even booted, and it built special data highways to stream brainwave data without hitting any digital traffic jams. This wasn't just any old operating system. It was a toolkit for connecting a brain to a computer. So we're at the home stretch. It's time to pull all of these threads together. Jobs' vision from 1983, the tech from particle physics, this super specialized operating system, and see if it paints a picture of a grand design. When you just lay it all out on a timeline, it's pretty stunning. It starts with the mission statement in '83. Then the tools and the network get built at CERN. Then the operating system, Darwin, is born. Then you get things like Apple's Research Kit, which turns millions of our phones into data collectors for biology. All while the physics tech keeps getting better, proving we can capture events 1,000,000 times faster than our own brains can. The author's point is that by now, all the pieces are on the board. Which brings us right back to the central claim of this whole thing. The argument is that the infrastructure we would need for digital immortality, it was never a secret. It was built right out in the open, one piece at a time, disguised as solutions to other, smaller problems. The true purpose, the author says, only snaps into focus when you step back and look at the whole 40-year story. So, I'll just leave you with the same question this analysis poses. Are all of these connections, from Jobs to CERN to Darwin to brain-computer interfaces, just a series of incredible coincidences? Or have we been watching a 40-year blueprint for immortality being built, step by step, right in front of our eyes?